There are two advantages of my stay at home. What are the two advantages? First, while staying at home, I am away from the cruel clutches of coronavirus. And second, I want to perform something positive and constructive job for my energetic and vibrant youth. Today, I would like to pinpoint an essay for CSS exam and rest of the other exam. And on top of that, this essay is very much informative. So my essay is, do we have any spark of enlightenment of our forefathers' legacy with reference to I.M.F and World Bank? So this is my essay. Now, before I start, out of this essay, I would like to go back history, that is 1945, when that Japan was defeated by the Allies. Now, what happened is that, now let us start, out of this thing. For this, we have to go back world past history. Definitely we should try to analyze world past history. The Japanese nation was devastated and dilapidated of the end of World War II. They had just lost a war and they had the atom bomb drop on them, even though they were already losing the war. Then the Japanese made a firm resolution. They said that they would conquer the world in another way. They would conquer the world in another way. They did economically. Now, what is this? After the World War II, when Japan lost war, and it was very cumbersome and very difficult and hard time for Japanese, because one thing is obvious, that atom bomb drop on them, even though they were having a lot of spark in them. Now what happened is that then the Japanese made a firm resolution. And what is the firm resolution? They did economically. Now there were two options in front of that was the Japanese. What were the two options? Either to face physically, either to take revenge physically, or to get positive revenge, that is economic. So there were two options in front of the Japanese. Now what happened is that the Japanese people, the Japanese youth, the vibrant youth of Japan, they were of the opinion that we would try to take revenge physically. But the cold-minded Japanese tried their best to communicate them that it is not wise. So they tried to convince them that they should try to fight on the front of economic. So one thing is obvious, that what happened is that then the Japanese made a firm resolution. And what was the firm resolution? They would conquer the world in another way. And what was another way? They did economically. The question arises, how such a wreck, desolate and dilapidated nation transform into a zenith of economic success, and why and how the people of the world recognize their level of excellence. Now it is very serious to think everyone should try to think that a dilapidated nation, a wrecked nation, dis, full with destruction of, of this nation, then what happened? What was the spark which forced them to come up and up? And what is that? It is because they had very positive wish and desire to stand once again in the key of nation with dignity and honor, with decency and decorum. To regain the lost excellence, they decided to address their demerits objectively and impartially. Now that was the thing. That was one of the most important things. And what was that? That they tried to analyze, that they tried to address their demerits, defects, objectively and impartially, coupled with their that of a rich legacy, which pushed them up and up. Is that clear? In that in the beginning, it is quite clear, all and sundry were opposing the Japanese, that they could not stand firm in their struggle to get their position. But they prove as a successful economy of the world. Today, now let us analyze. Today, they stand proudly among the family of nations. All countries are eager to be friends with Japan. Today, Pakistan, now let us analyze, let us try to compare that of Pakistan and that of Japan. Today, Pakistan is facing the worst economic challenges as sometime Japan was facing. Experience has shown that those which are connected with the policies of the agency, that is World Bank and I.M.F, which are, it's quite clear that those who are connected with the policies of I.M.F and World Bank, they cannot stand economically, because the donor agency, the donor countries, compel the receiving country to accept their policies. Is that clear? They try to compel the receiving country to accept their policies, which is harmful and injurious for the receiving countries and beneficial for the donor agency. Now, what happened is that it's quite clear. And what is that? Consequently, what happened is that the economy of their country is trying to nerve-ending problem. It is full with, that a conundrum, riddle, and puzzle, and things like that. Under such circumstances, Pakistan's economy is dwindling day by day because of blood-sucking policies of I.M.F and World Bank. Is that clear? So now let us move further. There is practical example in this perspective, in this scenario. Take that. I would like to give the example of that of a practical example of that of this word. We should try to analyze that of this thing. Take the example of India and Bangladesh. These two countries remain aloof from I.M.F and World Bank. What happened is that these two countries remain aloof from I.M.F and World Bank. Therefore, they are flourishing by leaps and bounds. Bangladesh went to I.M.F only once and soon analyzed the dire consequences of their future economy. So they quit I.M.F and World Bank. At present, Bangladesh's economy is better than Pakistan. Now let us analyze. It's quite strange that we should try to accept this bitter pills. It must be our first and foremost duty that we should try to accept this bitter pill. And what is bitter pill? That if I try to compare the economy of Bangladesh and the economy of Pakistan, Bangladesh economy is better as compared to Pakistan. So now let us analyze. If we compare China and India, China's economy is the worst economy as compared to China. Oh, sorry, India's economy is the worst economy as compared to China. If you try to compare India's economy and that of a Pakistan economy, in this context, sorry, in this context, if we try to compare China's economy and that of India's economy, China's economy is the best economy of the world, whereas India's economy is the worst economy in the world. So that is the thing. So that is the thing which is very problem solved. Now again, I'm of the opinion, if we compare China and India, India's economy is the worst economy as compared to China. China's economy is the best economy of the world because they do not depend upon the policies of any agencies. Now, in this context, I would like to go back history. And what is the history? Their leader, Mao Zedong, what the Mao Zedong tried to infuse in the mind of these people, Mao Zedong was of the opinion he was that cherishing leader. From the very beginning to end, he tried to convey the policy of independence, not the policy of dependent, not the policy of parasite. So from the very beginning, he tried to give, that is the policy of independent. Is that clear? Now, in this context, let us analyze one thing also very important. And what is that? He emphasized and stressed the indigenous industry as compared to the advanced industry of Europe. Now, in this context, let us analyze. The European tried their level best. They tried to introduce their industry, their commodity, their industry, their agricultural commodity or their industrial commodity. But what happened is that Mao Zedong tried to give them an idea that he does not believe to depend upon others. So he refused the idea depending upon others. In this context, I am of the opinion he tried to infuse in the mind of people of China, that they should try to depend upon their own abilities instead to become parasite of others. He instill and impart into their mind the trust that it must be their first and foremost duty that Chinese nation should try to trust their ability instead to become parasite of other. He was of the opinion that you shouldn't try to depend upon other. Now, what then happened? He told them the policy of success and victory, how that they can, how the people of China can adopt the policy of success and victory. It is because of the fact that when they try to depend upon their abilities, their own country, their own people, then what happened? I would like to give the example of again. If we try to analyze, that of the other countries, for instance, that is Japan, China, Bangladesh. If we compare these countries with that of the Pakistan economy is the worst economy. So why it is so? Why it is so? Because the policies of the policies which we try to depend the policy of, that of IMF and World Bank. They will definitely work for their own benefit, not for the benefit of, that of the country. So then what happened is that the need of the day is the need of the day that we should try to shatter illusion and misconception about our future prospect. We should try to realize our responsibility and open our eyes. What is happening around us? Like an eye opener, we should realize our obligation and learn lesson from China, Japan and Bangladesh. They are touching the zenith of success. Again, I am of the opinion that they are touching the zenith of success and whatnot. Is that clear? Whereas we are going down and down. Now, what is the philosophy behind? Because we try to depend upon IMF and World Bank. If we desire to change our fate and get rid from the key, get rid from the quagmire of IMF, World Bank, then we should address our own demerits, as sometimes Japan address her own demerits and defects. Secondly, rich legacy of our forefather. In this context, I am of the opinion that we have rich legacy of our forefather. We have rich legacy of our forefather, and it must be our foremost duty, or rather, it must be our foremost responsibility that we should try to follow the rich legacy of our forefathers, which will be a source of inspiration coupled with our firm dedication and determination to achieve the desired goal. And in this way, we can get rid from the menace of IMF and World Bank. Now, uh, how we can dwell? We cannot dwell unless and until we get, that way, help from IMF or World Bank. Experience has shown, history has taught us that those nations which never try to depend upon the policies of other countries, they never, those who try to depend upon the policies of other, they cannot dwell. So Pakistan directly, indirectly tried to depend upon the policies of IMF and World Bank. Then how we cannot progress, we cannot dwell, we cannot improve toward the road of progress. In this context, I would like to give you the example of one man, an individual. Individual becomes the collective. In this context, I'm of the opinion, one drop of water, if we try to increase the many drops, it becomes the collective effort. So there was a man, an individual man, when he was shunted out from team. He was a sportsman. He was shunted out from his team, and now there was no opportunity, no chance to get into the team. But with the help of his struggle, that of effort, and on top of that, he tried to address his demerits and defects, and then he again re-entered into the team. And that man became one of the most important and popular person of the world. So the thing is, if we try to depend upon our own self, then definitely we will get success. Unless and until we try to depend upon our own self, then we can develop. Otherwise, it is not possible. Those history has shown those who try to depend upon the policies of other countries, other agencies, in other words, I would like to say, the World Bank and the I.M.F. We cannot dwell. It must be our first and foremost duty that we should try to shatter illusion. We should try to shatter our illusion. And if we try to shatter illusion, try to analyze the bitter reality, we should try to come out from our dragginess, from our slowness, from our lethargic attitude. If we try to come out from our lethargic and that of a slow attitude, it must be our first and foremost duty that we should try to come out from our world of utopia, our world of imagination, our world of inspiration, our world of romanticism. Then definitely we should try to face the bitter, the acrimonious realities of life. If we try to experience, to face the bitter and acrimonious realities of life, the ground realities of life, the stark realities of life, then definitely we will get success. We will move toward the road of progress. Unless and until we depend upon others, we try to become parasite, and that will be the worst situation. So we, as a Pakistani, we should try to away from these things.